everybody, in today's video I'm going to be showing you an extreme 3D grizzly bear holding on to a trout that he just caught. I love this one. The grizzly bear has a slightly wet look. I put a 3D glaze on top of his fur so it looks like he might have just had his head all the way underwater, and I kind of sculpted the fur into little tufts to also help with that appearance. I love the way this one turned out. If you're interested in these 3D animals that are extreme, over the top, and realistic, I have a whole list of them and I will put that in the description box below, so check for that, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! So here we are going to begin with our background for this one, and as with most of my realistic 3D animals, I'm doing a very kind of swirly generic colored background that's got some greens and some neutral colors. The one thing I am going to be doing differently for my grizzly is switching to a water-toned aqua for the tip of the nail, just to make it look like our grizzly bear is still standing in a river or a lake or something. After that background is done, going from green swirled into like a tan brown into that aqua, we're going to encapsulate it with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure that everything is protected and nice and strong. So once you have all of that done, then you can go through and file this nail into shape. Remember though that there is going to be so much 3D work on top of this that if the nail itself is a little thin or doesn't have an extreme beautiful apex, it actually isn't that big a deal. Because the 3D art can almost act as your apex, it's going to add strength. And if you don't want it to be too bulky, sometimes it's okay to have the nail itself be a little thinner when you know there's going to be a lot going on top of it. On the nail form backing on the side, you guys just watched me make the base for our little grizzly bear's snout. And now on the nail, we're going to start just kind of working in the shape of where our grizzly's going to be. So I'm going to have the front of the face be towards the middle of the nail and then have like his neck just sort of come off to the side. He will be slightly angled on the nail, so when you're doing this, try to envision what his face will look like once it's sculpted up and built up, and then create the base off of that. So we've got one ear that's completely visible. The second ear is partially cut off by the sidewall of the nail, just to see one little corner of it. But just keep adding layers to this. I'm using a very dark brown for this first stage of it. I'm going to just slowly start to build up that brow area. I'm going to add a second bead right in that forehead area, slope it back. But as you can see, I left a pretty significant ridge right under where the eyes are going to be. And then I'm going to grab that snout that I made on the nail form backing and just sort of hold it up to the place where I want it to be, gluing it down with a little bit of that same color of tan acrylic. And then using more of that color, and my little snout came off once I added that second bead that weighed it down, I'm going to be building up the top of the snout. That second bead obviously is going to help add some security to it so it's not going to fall off again, but because mine did get loose in the process, I'm just going to hold my thumb underneath it. That is a perfectly fine option if you have on a glove. If you are not wearing a glove and you just have your skin, do not use your finger like that to support what you're working on, because you have a very high risk of some pretty serious chemical exposure. If you are wearing a pair of gloves, it is okay. It isn't something that I would necessarily recommend doing just constantly touching your acrylic with your glove, even though you're wearing the glove. One thing I have read is that really there's not enough evidence as to how long your gloves work before they start to allow chemical exposure to come through them. One place I read it said an hour. So if you're somebody that does want to work with your gloves and touch acrylic often, where you're actually like handling it with your hands, say I've seen some people where they'll take and they'll have some doughy texture acrylic that's in the process of curing and they'll roll it between their palms to form a sphere. If you're going to be doing a lot of that for one reason or another, I would recommend switching out your pair of gloves every 30 minutes to an hour, just to be on the safe side. Repeated chemical exposure in any circumstance is not a good thing. I know that there is not as much evidence with EMA acrylics as far as what kind of damage they can do, but there's a lot of evidence of neurological problems with MMA, acrylic monomer exposure. And so depending on where you get your acrylic from, just in general, err on the safe side. And so anytime I do something myself where I'm like, that maybe wasn't the best idea, even though it's not, completely horrible, I really like to make sure that I'm not miseducating and giving somebody an idea that maybe they shouldn't be doing. So with all of that fun stuff mentioned, we're just going to keep working on our bear, adding more layers to him with more of that dark brown and just a little bit of that lighter brown right on the snout area. You don't want to do too much of the lighter brown and overdo it. It's really just focused on the very tip of his nose. And then after we have him done to that point where his lower jaw isn't yet sculpted in, we're going to work on our fish. So on a nail form backing, sculpt just a base shape of your fish. It almost looks like an eyebrow, like a shaped eyebrow, at least to me. And then I'm going to be adding a little tail on the end of that eyebrow. So that's going to be a green and clear tail. So when you're grabbing your bead of acrylic, first dip into a little bit of clear and then dip into dark green. Bend your nail form backing as that's cured to give your fish a little bit of a curved shape. And then we're going to start building up our fish in general with more acrylic. So I actually was hoping for a salmon fish when I was looking at reference photos trying to find a good fish option. And you know, originally, like I said, I was thinking of salmon, but this trout, just the colors of the green really contrasted nicely with the background. And then the fact that this fish is a fairly light color in general, despite having some of that dark green here and there, it really showed off nicely against the grizzly's fur. So depending on what you're looking for, I would recommend going with a trout just because he did look nice with the composition of the rest of this nail. So we've got that little bit of a gill sculpted, add the eye. However much detail you want to add to your fish, go for it. Like if you want to sculpt in or paint in scale detail, you can certainly do that. Other details, you know, as much as you want to do. Personally, the fish is going to be partially covered up by the jaws of our grizzly, and so I didn't feel like I needed to take the time to do all the detailing that I probably would if this whole design was only about the fish. Back to my nail form backing, I'm going to be sculpting a dorsal fin and a pectoral, or 2 pectoral fins, with more of my white or clear and green mix. Oh my goodness, the clear and the green. So we're going to be flipping our fish over, adding the underside of the fish, kind of bulking that up, blending in some more green, letting those fins I just sculpted sit to the side to cure. That's one thing I don't mention often, is a lot of times I will show you things out of order than that I painted them in or sculpted them in, just because I'm allowing for dry time. So I'll kind of jump back and forth on what I'm working on. So in between doing these layers of the fish, I'm going back to my grizzly bear and doing more work on him. And I just kind of go back and forth working things out so that I get things done a little bit more efficiently than finishing one piece at a time, so I don't have to just wait for everything to cure and do nothing in the process. So we're going to attach those fins. So I'm going to flip my fish upside down, look at him from the bottom. Here's the first pectoral fin. I am using nail glue to attach it down. Nail glue, just like with anything else, doesn't always listen to me. So once I get it glued down, I am going to use some more of my acrylic, clear acrylic, just to secure those fins in place. So there's the second pectoral fin, and then I'm going to be adding on that dorsal fin. The dorsal fin goes a little bit longer than what I sculpted on the fish. It goes a little bit closer to the head, but I knew that a lot of that was going to end up being inside my fish's, or inside the grizzly's mouth. And so it's going to be in his mouth. I don't need to make it. It's kind of my philosophy. A little bit more of that acrylic onto my fins, making sure that not only are they well secured, but they're thick enough that they're not going to be so fragile that they will break right away. So those ones are looking pretty good. And then after I have that done, there's another little set of fins. There's a couple different things just on the underside of the fish. And actually, in terms of sculpting and detailing things, because of the angle that we're seeing the fish with him being in the grizzly's mouth, it's more important to add plenty of detail to our fish's belly than his back. So as you're adding these last final details to the belly, the only other thing that I really feel like our fish needs as far as extra detail is going to be a little bit of a peachy color on just the sides, kind of wrapping around the belly, and a little bit on the fins. Basically anywhere you want to add just a little bit of that warm peachier tone. I'm going to peel my fish off of that poster putty, add some more of that peachy color to the other side. If as you're applying it, you don't apply it in a very smooth motion, more of a dabbing motion, it will start to look like scales. Now we're going to take and glue our little fishy to the underside of our mouth, of our upper jaw of the grizzly, secure underneath, back kind of in with some of the clear acrylic, and then go through with your tan and your brown and start sort of finishing off our grizzly's mouth area. So we're going to just try to take and fill it in and round out the shapes of it a little bit, having it nicely wrap around our fish. This part is a little bit tricky just because the acrylic might want to kind of like overtake the fish and melt around it. So you might have to tuck it in a little bit here and there just to keep it from going too far over your fish. You want to make sure that it doesn't look like your grizzly's mouth melds with the fish, but they stay two separate things. And then as you're doing this, you're also going to want to add the lower lips and lower jaw of your grizzly, holding on to that poor little fishy. So there we go. We've got the lower part of this mouth. I absolutely love sculpting animals. I can't get enough of it. Animals and food, those are my two things that I can't stop sculpting just because I love it. They're two things that are so important in my life that creating them in art one way or another just is very natural to me. If you are an animal lover like I am, I highly recommend you check out those links like I mentioned in the intro in the description box below for my past realistic 3D animals. I've been doing them with this level of attention to detail for a little less than a year, and I've made quite a few of them, and I just love them. And if you guys have any animals that I haven't done yet that you either don't see in the list below or just don't remember, ask me about them, request them. I'm always looking for new ideas, and I'd love to know what you guys are interested in as far as what animals you'd like to see. There are a few that are on my list to do for sure that you guys have requested before and I haven't just gotten around to yet because I kind of do them on a whim, whichever ones I sort of feel like they're calling to me at the moment. So I have a list that I keep, but otherwise, you know, if there's one that you haven't seen yet or one you think I might have forgotten about, just let me know, because I don't plan on stopping making these. And while there's no shortage of inspiration in the animal kingdom, if there's one in particular that you guys would enjoy more than others, definitely let me know. So I'm going to go through with a lighter shade of brown and with some black and add some highlights and some shading into my fur just to give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more highlighting. I'm going to use the lighter shade of brown to add my Grizzly's eyes. Not too much other detail is needed with acrylic, and then once you're done with all of that, we can go through with some acrylic paint and add just the necessary little bits of detail that are required here and there around our bear. So you can outline his eyes, you can add a little bit of a pupil, a little highlight. Grizzly bear's eyes compared to the rest of his body are relatively small, unlike say a giraffe where they have those huge big eyes. And so the amount of space I have in order to detail the eyes is very minimal, so I'm not going to really overdo it. With some diluted white paint, I'm going to go through and highlight the fur. Because he's wet, he's going to have white highlights in his fur, little reflection lines all over that are bouncing off of that water that is in the fur. So you can add a little bit more of a streaky highlighting effect across him. Add a little bit of detail to your fish, mostly just eyeballs and possibly a few outlines. Don't overdo your fish detail. Keep the focus really on the grizzly bear. The fact that he's holding a fish is just like a bonus. I'm going to add a couple more details as I feel like they're necessary. A little bit of brown in his fur just to brighten up that color, and then apply a layer of gel sealer over the background. And then if you want to, I almost regret this decision, but I used a 3D glaze over my grizzly bear, which gives it sort of a satiny finish. And I feel like that almost sort of reduced some of the effect of him. I might do a matte top coat if I were to redo this, but either way, whether you do a 3D glaze or a matte top coat, it's up to you. He does look more wet this way, but I just feel like some of the detail got lost. So, you know, whatever works for you, learn from my mistakes. I hope you guys love this design as much as I do, and don't forget to share recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram. I always love to see them, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!